why, when we feel it's time to end something and this is not serving me, this is not healthy, yet our body keeps going back to this safety net of this trauma bond? Why do we keep how can we detach that strong attachment that, like, our head knows it's not serving us, but our whole body is leaning into it?
We create reparative experiences. So when we stay kind of in that trauma, that traumatized place or that survival place, we're just deepening the wound. And we don't leave because we've never seen someone leave. We've never left. It's unfamiliar. So it's like stay in something familiar or choose the unknown.
Yeah.
And most of us are programmed to think familiar is safety.
Yeah.
But really, there's more safety in the unknown because the possibility of expansion, the possibility of creating safety is so much bigger than it actually is in the familiar.
Yeah.
So each time we choose something different or we choose the unfamiliar, we're literally telling our body, showing our body, look, it's safe. We can do this. And it like mobilizes us out of helplessness. Because I think that's part of the reason we stay too, is we feel stuck and helpless.
Welcome, ladies. I'm super excited because I've had Erika on before, and last conversation was epic and fueled with so much wisdom. So we have her back. Welcome back. Erika is a trauma coach. Introduce yourself and what you do.
Thank you. It's so good to be back. We've been trying to like connect again for feels like a couple months now.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, a little bit about myself. I do work in trauma, coaching, writing, speaking, moving into speaking. But really my work is around the nervous system and the attachment system and that intersection between the two. What happens at that intersection? I just deeply believe we can't heal our trauma if we don't regulate our nervous system. And our attachment system is where we have connection, and we need connection to heal trauma. So the two of them are just linked. And the work here is to step into secure attachment by creating safety and security and regulation internally so that we can have the intimacy and the fulfilling relationships that we're looking for.
Tell me, if we don't heal this, what happens towards the relationships that we attract moving forward if we don't heal these unconscious trauma triggers that keep playing up in our life?
I think the simplest answer to that is we keep repeating the same pattern. We keep choosing the same partner in different clothing. It's like the same lesson we keep repeating, and trauma keeps repeating unless we intervene, unless we become more conscious to it, unless we can create enough safety in our own body to be able to recognize when our body is saying, no, this isn't safe. And yes, this is a open, deepen, vulnerable place to be. Yeah.
And that's a beautiful segue to like go into what we're going to be talking about today. And that's why, when we feel someone like it's time to end something and this is not serving me, this is not healthy, yet our body keeps going back to this safety net of this trauma bond. Why do we keep how can we detach that strong attachment that, like, our head knows it's not serving us, but our whole body is leaning into it?
Yeah. Oh, I feel that. I like got chills when you said that, because I really can resonate with that feeling. And I think most of us can, because most of us have had multiple relationships, you know, by the time we're in our 30s or older. And we end relationships ultimately because they're not right. And so we hit that juncture of having to make that decision of how to exit. And I think often we don't leave because it's so familiar. Like that person brings up and simulates a very familiar feeling within our body, and it kind of replicates the feeling we had in our earliest relationship or our childhood environment.
Yeah.
When someone can kind of provoke that same internal experience, we stay because it's so familiar, or because we have this unconscious pull to this person because we think we can change that person or the situation, and that will ultimately heal the wound.
Yeah.
But really, the healing is in leaving those situations, right? It is in coming back into our body and like feeling all of these cues of this is out of alignment, this isn't right, this isn't safe. But we've just learned to be disembodied, to like self
Yeah.
abandon, right?
Yeah.
To avoid having the hard conversations, to not put up the boundaries, to not say no. But I think it's because that pull to familiar is so ingrained in us.
Yeah. So if we acknowledge that and notice that, and our intuition is saying this is time to leave, this is time to end it, but our body just keeps going towards it, and we suddenly set that boundary and that decision to change it, and it's super painful. Are we rewiring our body, our like our subconscious body then? Like, does that mean next time that pattern will be less, or will it be just as strong, or how will we experience the future after that? Are we listening to our body?
I love that question because I actually just wrote about this today, is that we create reparative experiences.
Mm.
So when we stay and we stay kind of in that trauma, that traumatized place or that survival place, we're just deepening the wound. And we
Yeah.
don't leave because we've never seen someone leave. We've never left. It's unfamiliar. So it's like stay in something familiar or choose the unknown.
Yeah.
And most of us are programmed to think familiar is safety.
Yeah.
Really, there's more safety in the unknown because the possibility of expansion, the possibility of creating safety is so much bigger than it actually is in the familiar.
Yeah.
So each time we choose something different or we choose the unfamiliar, we're literally telling our body, showing our body, look, it's safe. We can do this. And it like mobilizes us out of helplessness. Because I
Yeah.
think that's part of the reason we stay too, is we feel stuck and helpless.
Yeah.
Really, like we move ourselves out of that when we move into choice and when we
Mm.
choose the unfamiliar.
Yeah. Okay, so we've chosen the unfamiliar, and maybe we've gone through a breakup, and that unfamiliar feels so painful, and we feel alone and we feel lonely. Same word. We feel anxious. It feels like too much, and every part of us wants to just pick up the phone and text them, or we're not texting them, but we're obsessively checking in on maybe they're over here, or looking at their active status, and that trauma bond. How do we move through that pain?
Yeah, it's so hard. I want to acknowledge that too. It's
Mm.
so hard. It's not easy, and there's like a time period where our attachment system is literally going through that detachment process, and it almost feels like a limb is being ripped off of your body, right?
Oh
Because it's
yeah, yeah,
so much enmeshment there. You feel like you're losing part of yourself.
yeah,
um, but I think really creating a boundary for yourself has nothing to do with the other person, but the boundary of your for yourself, that I can't have contact with this person, because
yeah,
I think it's really only in the no contact, for a period of time, that helps the attachment system detach.
yeah,
But I think during that time, we have to acknowledge we need more support, right? We need our friends, we need possibly our family, we need to sit with a professional. That's where we get to do the inner work, and that's when we get to be intimate with our pain. The more we can
yeah,
turn towards our pain, the more we can alchemize it, the more we can be more intimate with ourselves. So I think,
mm,
as painful as heartbreak is, it's also such an initiation like into ourselves. And
yeah,
that's like, you see all the time. I don't know if you've had this experience too, but when I've had my heart broken or a relationship has ended, the next 6 months, if I honor that space, is so transformative.
Yeah.
Like unbelievably transformative. And it's
Yes.
not because it's easy or pain free, but it's like when you honor that boundary and like come back to the self work, it's amazing what unfolds. It's like you really truly get to know yourself in a different way. You take all that energy, you know, that you were giving and giving and giving and bring
Putting
that.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it actually can be a really beautiful place if we let it be.
Yes, that is so big because when we're going through this, it just feels like everything is crashing down. But we do have the opportunity to look at it as like this beautiful gift and learning. And I think like for the listeners, when you're going through this process is often when, or is when you're literally being a sponge to seeing new ways of thinking, to like seeing internally of patterns that you've been operating because you're seeking answers. And back to that transformation, that's why there's so much growth in the breakdown.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like what really helps me, a dear friend of mine said this to me. This was probably at least a handful of years ago when I had gotten out of my last long term partnership. And he had said to me, it seems like you really only ruminate on this person when you're not feeling good about yourself.
Mm.
And it was such a huge like light bulb moment, because when
Yeah.
I was feeling really connected or I was in my flow or in my passions or you know learning something new, this person was very far removed from kind of my energy or my mind.
Yeah.
But when I felt myself kind of dip into a place of like, I don't feel that great about myself right now, that's when kind of that rumination or that almost fantasizing on the good times comes
Yes.
back. And I think
Yes.
that's where we really get stuck in pain when we
Yeah.
stay there. But if we can like use it as like this mindfulness trigger of like, oh wow, I'm really obsessing over this person right now. How do I feel about myself right
Yeah.
now? How does
Yeah.
my body feel right now? And so if we use that as like a cue to come back to ourselves, I think it helps kind of break that cycle and like get out of our head.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's something that I think would be kind of, I don't know if fun is the right word, but interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely.
it's it's part of like my own, I think, personal work and work I do with clients, but this idea that we're really pulled towards our trauma,
Yes.
and we get really pulled towards trauma bonds.
Yeah.
So oftentimes like we mistake it or call it chemistry or we call it love, right? Or we are like, this person feels like home.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is that when that comes up, that is usually a, this is where I need to pass, right?
Interesting.
This is where I need to step back.
Mm.
And it's so challenging because that pull towards someone, that like magnetism towards
Yeah.
someone is so intoxicating and it's so seductive.
Yeah.
And I find more often than not, those aren't safe relationships.
Mm. I'm curious, where do you find the different, like, at what time point do you decide that it's not the right relationship and that it is a trauma bond? Because you get so sucked into that feeling of home, that connection.
Yeah. I don't think there's a specific answer that I could give you of like exactly a time frame of it. But
Yeah.
I do know if I'm going to explore that kind of connection with someone that I feel that pull towards, I'm right away, the boundary for myself is we're not going to engage physically,
Yeah.
because then all the sexual hormones and chemistry just clouds your judgment, right? And
Mm.
you're attaching from kind of that sexual attraction piece
Yeah.
as opposed to that emotional connection or the safety piece.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of when you are magnetized to someone, it's like putting up a boundary that's going to help you gain clarity as opposed to just going like head first
Yeah.
into the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so easy to just decide to dive in and get that hit essentially. But in the long term, it like as high as it goes, it can crash as well.
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference is like how quickly it moves at the beginning.
Yeah.
How much spark there is at the beginning. If it's so big and so hot and so passionate, it's kind of like, okay, there's probably a lot of sexual attraction here. There's probably actually a lot of trauma
Yeah.
that we're kind of ping-ponging back from each other.
Yeah.
So it's really just bringing that level of awareness into it, you know?
Yeah, I love this so much, especially because I feel like the women in affairs will be able to relate so much to this because often when they have met this man that's married and it's a forbidden thing, the intensity is so strong and they feel so sexually connected. They feel like this is like no experience that they've had before, and the depth of it is so big. The pain is also so big, but I also feel because it's an affair, it's easy for us to create the assumption that the reason why it's not working is because of this piece that he is essentially married and he is something that we can't get. And so as soon as that is solved, the relationship will be solved. And it's so easy to well, it makes sense to think that because if there is something not working, it must be the fact that like I am hurting, I can't get all of him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, often when we remove that piece, there's still the challenge that this was a very much trauma bonded experience, an experience that came off the back of something that you can't have.
Yeah.
So how one of the things that women are challenged with is when they have the intensity of an affair experience, they feel like that is love because it's so intense and so deep. And so you need each other so much. How can you step away from that and be happy and satisfied in a relationship that is comfortable and easy and at peace?
So when I think about someone entering into like an affair type situation, what I think a big part of the allure of it is the mystery, right? Because mystery and kind of forbidden in a sense creates more sexual chemistry, right? When there's more mystery, there's more desire. So it makes a lot of sense why the intensity in those relationships are really high because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot riding on the line.
Yeah.
But I also think a big part of why we get attracted to whether it's an affair or just certain types of relationships.
Unavailable men.
Exactly. It's because there's a level of unavailability.
Oh.
And yeah, I was like, yeah, exactly. But what that's really reflecting back to us is there's a part of me that's not available. Like I feel safer actually with someone who's unavailable because I also am, because it's also not asking me to have to go as deep or have to open the same way because like there's this unavailability that protects us from a certain level of intimacy.
Yeah.
Right. And so then when we get into other relationships where there's not factors such as another person, maybe not factors such as there's kids and it's just, you know, you and this other person, there's so much more space for actual intimacy. And most of us are actually terrified of that. It's like we deeply crave intimacy and we deeply fear it. Because intimacy, we've learned intimacy and love and pain kind of all coagulate together. So for me, some of like my like most like fulfilling work right now, like personal work, not just with clients, but is really like, how do I define love? I think I need to relearn what love actually is because most of the time our understanding of love is conditional,
Yeah.
and we have to be a
Yeah.
certain way to get love, to earn love.
Yeah.
And conditional love and codependency go together. But
Yeah.
we need to unlearn that paradigm, because what we all actually really want, I believe, is unconditional love, like that
Mm.
freedom, that intimacy, that full self expression, right? Um, but there's so many things preventing us from stepping into that. And most of it is fear
Um,
based.
yeah, absolutely. The statistics on men cheating, sorry, men having multiple sexual relationships, the statistics of actually go up. So when men actually get into a relationship, their desire to break that and actually go out and cheat is higher than when he is single. He doesn't have that need to go out and sleep with other women because the fear is not there. So that is definitely something that happens. We like get into something and we want to self-sabotage it because of that fear.
Yeah. And I think so much of the time, if we go back to attachment styles,
Mm.
is when we get with partners in like that anxious avoidance dance, right? The
Yeah.
anxious person is going to keep leaning into the relationship. They're going to abandon themselves for the other person. They're going to spill out all of their energy on the other person. And the avoidant person is not going to be able to hold that. It's too much for them to hold. So then they start kind of distancing or looking elsewhere or withdrawing or shutting down, which then now we're just ping ponging, right? The anxious person gets more anxious, the avoidant person gets more avoidant, because the wounds that we're looking at here, the anxious person, it's their fear of loss, their abandonment wound. And the avoidant person, it's the fear of enmeshment.
Yeah.
And so these wounds just play so perfectly together,
Mm.
until someone steps out or until someone does leave.
Can you go deeper into the fear of enmeshment and what that actually is?
Yeah. So enmeshment is that feeling of being suffocated or smothered, or feeling like you are completely responsible for someone else's well being, for their feelings, for their happiness. Like you are responsible for that person.
Mm.
And that is a lot to hold.
Yeah, absolutely. How do people that fear that start to like be okay with commitments in life when that fear is so great?
Yeah, it's truly very hard. And um, I think really at the core of both anxious attachment and avoidant attachment is anxiety. It's just
Yeah.
manifested differently.
Yeah.
And I think when people with anxious attachment start to heal, they actually discover how avoidant they really are.
Mm.
And so, avoidancy, when we start to step into that, it's like looking into all of our voids. Like if you take that word, it's a void, right?
Yeah.
So, we're not wanting to look or be with our voids.
Mm.
And that's the shadow work, right? It's like meeting all those parts of ourselves that we've repressed, we've exiled, we've cut off. But it's reclaiming those parts and actually discovering like what is the need, what was the
Yeah.
need that wasn't met, so that
Yeah.
we start to learn to meet our own needs. So then it won't feel so enmeshed in a relationship, it won't feel so codependent, it won't feel like I got to get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful. I have one other question on that. So, with affair relationships, and you've got the avoidant and the anxious attachment styles, how do we know if a woman is listening to this and she's in an affair and she feels like this is my soulmate, like where is this going, am I going to wait around or do I need to move on? How do we know if it's healthy love or trauma bonding, love coming from a trauma bonding place, from a place of need instead of feeling whole?
Yeah, I imagine you might have more expertise in this area. I don't know the statistics of healthy relationships being born out of affair relationships. I don't know that. I
Yeah.
imagine there would be a lot of trauma healing that would have to take place for a relationship to be healthy and successful after that kind of start and that foundation.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like what I would say to women in that situation is really to ask themselves, do I deserve more? Do I want a full person in my full life?
Mm.
Why do I only want half of someone or be in half of their life? And to kind of reflect on those questions to start.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it really comes down to boundary work and getting clear on, if I'm going to be with this person, what is my bottom line?
Mm.
Do I need them to exit out of the relationship that they're already in?
Yeah.
Can I be honest with that and own that? Am I okay just having this person part of the time? Like, am
Yeah.
I okay in this dynamic? I would imagine most people aren't.
Mm.
And I think needing to be honest about that and vocalize and take the risk of losing that person
It's
by
scary.
stating, I need all of you. And if that's not something you can do, then I can't be here.
Participate in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about for the women that like infidelity has this compelling of that unforbidden fruit as well. So there's this light in it. Um, what if women really like get a piece of fulfillment from that, and they actually feel like if I didn't, if I had all of him, I wouldn't want him.
Mm-hmm.
How do they shift from wanting a person that is unavailable and enjoying that whole process and feeling good in that whole process to actually being able to step back and enjoy a relationship where it can be coming from a fully whole committed place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I would really begin with understanding the difference between pleasure and love,
Mm.
because I think pleasure often leads to pain and often leads to addiction.
Yeah.
And I think love is something completely different.
Yeah.
And so just really getting clear on that, like viscerally, like what
Yeah.
pleasure feel like when it's kind of a dopamine and serotonin hit, just like if we eat sugar,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
this high and then there's this crash, right? And then there's all these negative repercussions that happen if we continue to eat so much sugar,
Yeah.
right? And but it's pleasurable, right? It
Mm-hmm.
like lights us up in those ways, but it's not sustainable and it ultimately leads to pain or dis-ease, right, in the body.
Yeah.
Whereas I think love is something so different than that.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It doesn't like these highs can absolutely suck us in,
Yeah,
but they can also bring us down.
totally. And I think if we connect with like our own desire more and our own passions,
Yeah.
that we start to feel fulfilled in that way, right? But I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we're so cut off from our passions and our desires
Yeah.
that we kind of get misplaced.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Placed in the hands of another.
Yeah.
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 Beautiful. Well, I think we're at time. We absolutely are. Thank you so much for this conversation. I bet I'll have heaps of amazing feedback. So if we have more questions, leave them in the comments below, and we'll be able to support you on that journey. Thank you so much, Erika.
Thank you. This is great.